All right, we are live now. Welcome, everyone. We're very excited to have all of you here in person and also live online on LinkedIn and also YouTube. Uh, we're here for BOAB's inaugural Innovation Expo. I'm Steve Nouri. I'm your host today. I used to do a lot of Python programming, and this is natural career progression to MC this event. Uh, Firstly, I would like to acknowledge the traditional owners of the land on which this event takes place from, the voluntary people of Kulin Nation, as well as the traditional owners across our country. I pay my respects to elders, past, present, and emerging. And I expect this acknowledgement and respect to elders from other nations on those land we meet, wherever we are calling in from today. I would also like to thank the supporters of BOAB AI, Artesian, and Launchvic. And we would like to thank our sponsors, University of Melbourne. We have a fantastic lineup today, amazing thought leaders in AI. We're going to begin with the debate about the AI being an existential threat or not. So this is something that we are going to learn today, and hopefully we get to a great conclusion. Good luck to both of you, Kat and Jeremy. It will be followed by a panel talking about how to go global with AI. And finally, we will get to hear from our fantastic AI scale-ups companies. Just some housekeeping. For those joining us online, you will see in your Eventbrite email 3 links. These are 3 links for each sessions. So after each session, we will jump onto the next one. So just make sure that you will follow all of these 3 amazing events. For those in person, please use the bathroom on level 3. We will have our amazing friend Archie standing near the lift, and we'll give you the key to go to level 3 and come back. Also, if you like to post about this event, just make sure to tag us and use the hashtag AI Innovation Expo. All right. Now, before we begin, I would like to invite Andrew Lai, Managing Director of BOAB AI, to deliver some opening speech for us. Thank you, Andrew.
Thanks a lot, Steve. It's a great honor to have you here today. And for those of you that don't know Steve, he's got a tremendous online presence. He's one of the world's top AI influencers, over 500,000 followers. So what you're seeing today is actually just being streamed all around the world. For those of you that don't know me, I'm Andrew. I'm the Managing Director of BOAB AI. BOAB AI is a scale-up investment program helping high-growth companies to expand and grow around the world. I did have one ask for the audience here today and also online. In order for us to create an ecosystem, it very much requires assistance from everyone. So obviously, we love doing these events and we think it's tremendous. But, in order for us to have a sustainable ecosystem, at the end of the day, we also do need, the corporations, the governments, the academia, the entrepreneurs, all to get together to lift all boats. So I think the saying is the rising tide lifts all boats. So, but thank you those who have joined us today and also online. Really appreciate your support. Big thank you to Kashalia over there, who's made this all possible today. It was all her hard work that's put together the live audience and the live stream. So that's fantastic. Also, big thank you to Artesian. So Matt and Tim there down the back. Artesian are Asia Pacific's most active venture capital investor, over 600 investments, and they are the parent organization of BOAB AI. Big thank you also to Launchvic, Victoria's investment agency that made all of this possible, and Victorian government that continue to support us, and also the University of Melbourne for being such excellent partners and sponsors. And yeah, we also have Professor Adrian Pierce, who's very, very well renowned in artificial intelligence, giving a bit of a speech afterwards. So that's all from me. Without any further ado, I'll hand it back to Steve to begin the debate.
Awesome. All right. Thank you very much, Andrew. Now we are going to have our first session. It's a very highly anticipated debate between AI pioneer Jeremy Howard from Fast AI and an AI ethicist, our Dr. Catriona Wallace from Boab AI and Ethical AI. So, Catriona, I'd like to please come to the front, and also Jeremy, welcome you virtually.
Hello.
All right. Hello. All right. This debate will begin with Catriona and Jeremy delivering their opening statements for 5 minutes, and then each one will have 2-3 minutes rebuttals. Catriona and Jeremy, how are you going?
Yeah, I'm all ready and all prepared to win this debate.
Yes. How about you, Jeremy? Feeling the pressure?
Well, I think it's going to be pretty tight. Kat's obviously more qualified than me, smarter than me, and more charismatic than me. But on the downside, she got the negative, which is going to make it really tough for her to win. So I think overall it could be pretty close.
Yeah, no, that's great. Yeah, no pressure. There will be ice buckets for the one that loses this battle. All right, very excited. Let the battle begin. Please, Kat, please.
Great.
Yes.
Thank you, Steve. Good afternoon, honourable guests, dear online audience, and my worthy opponent, Jeremy. The AI existential risk is real. Now, the key in this statement is the term threat. I'm not going to tell you that there is 100% certainty that the world will end at the hand of the robots. My job is to convince you that the threat of AI being an existential risk is indeed real. So, what is an existential risk? Existential risks are those that could bring about human extinction, civilizational collapse, or the permanent destruction of human potential. So it could be that humans are wiped out altogether, or the potential of humanity is destroyed. For example, only a small percentage of humans are left and they are back to subsistence farming. Usually we like to time-bound the thinking around existential risk, and typically we do this within the century. So we're going to think about this within the next 80 years. Now, today I'm going to lean heavily on the work of existential risk professor Dr. Toby Ord from the University of Oxford. Dr. Ord lists the relative chances of existential risks being realised this century in the following of magnitude. Asteroid impact, 1 in a million chance. Supervolcanic explosion, 1 in 10,000 chance. Solar explosion, 1 in 1 billion. So total natural risk, humans not involved, 1 in 10,000 chance of destroying humanity by the end of the century. Now, the anthropogenic risks. Anthropogenic risks are anything that we humans are involved in. Nuclear war, what do you think? 1 in 1,000. Climate change, interestingly, 1 in 1,000. Natural arising pandemics, 1 in 10,000. Engineered pandemics, 1 in 30. Now, misaligned artificial intelligence. The risk, my friends, dear online audience and face-to-face people in this room, of us dying at the hands of misaligned AI is 1 in 10. I'll just let you sit with that for a little moment. So, the highest existential risk to humanity from artificial intelligence. So let's jump into these risks. Broadly speaking, there are 5 plausible ways that AI presents an existential risk to we humans. 1, AI as an existential threat multiplier. AI is nuclear. It's not going to go well. AI driving existential vulnerability. AI makes we humans more vulnerable to other risks. 3, malicious use of AI systems. 4, accidental or unintentional failure of AI systems. 5, misaligned advanced AI, where the AI does not align with human values. So a future may well look like this. And Jeremy, I do hope that you're really listening to this winning part of my speech. AI gains access to the
Sorry, I
internet.
wasn't concentrating. Did you say something?
and hides AI gains access to the internet and hides thousands of copies of itself, ready to continue the job if the original program is removed. Then the AI takes over millions of unsecured systems, creating a large botnet. The AI then gains financial resources. The AI then gains human resources, possibly through blackmail and propaganda. The AI then has the same power as the most powerful underworld criminal organizations. The AI then escalates its power again, taking over millions of computers, using this to continue to improve its own intelligence. Then the AI develops new weapons in order to protect its position in achieving its own goals. And finally, ladies and gentlemen, Jeremy, finally, destruction for the end of humanity. Very simply put, the problem with AI is that the machines are trained to achieve goals, but not to understand and deploy human values. And the risk comes as we create these agents with intelligence beyond our own.
Thank you, Catriona.
Am I done?
Yes.
I just have one more thing to say because we can just slide into this. So, Jeremy will argue that AI is not that intelligent and can't even do menial chores. However, he is not correct. Also, disagreeing with Jeremy and agreeing with these, agreeing with me.
We have to cut you. Sorry.
Stephen Hawking, is he a stupid person, ladies and gentlemen? No, he is not.
No.
Elon Musk, stupid person? No. Bill Gates, stupid person? No. They all agree with me. So my very final word, ladies and gentlemen, is that if you answer yes to either of these questions, you will indeed agree with my side of the debate. Can you, ladies and gentlemen, imagine a future where humans are not the most intelligent entity in the world? Yes, of course you can. You're here to speak about AI. The final question, ladies and gentlemen, is there at least one crazy person in the world who is a data scientist? Yes, thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you very much. All right. Thank you, Catriona. That was great, but we will give Jeremy the same time to respond. So don't worry about it. We're going to be fair. So Jeremy, you believe the AI existential threat is not real. We would like to hear your argument, and here you go.
Well, Kat might need 6 minutes to make this claim, but it's actually such a strong claim on the negative. I'll probably only need 4. So, you know, that those times he was saying thank you, that was actually his polite way of saying you're done. Please stop talking, just for future reference, Kat. Look, a lot of people talk about the existential threat of artificial intelligence, and I want to quote from the New York Times and what Kate Crawford described this as. Kate Crawford is a very well-regarded ethicist, and she wrote an article titled "Artificial Intelligence's White Guy Problem." And the white guy problem she's referring to is the threat of the AI existential threat. She says, according to some prominent voices in tech, AI presents a looming existential threat to humanity. People like Elon Musk and Nick Bostrom warn about the singularity when machines become smarter than humans. Does that ring a bell? But she says this hand-wringing is a distraction from the very real problems with artificial intelligence today, which may already be exacerbating inequality at the workplace, at home, and in our legal and judicial systems. This is my argument, is that the idea that we should look at some very abstract, fuzzy idea of a threat, of an existential threat of AI, distracts us from very real threats today. And it's actually more than that. The very real threats today and in the near future is actually the reason that there isn't an existential threat from AI. Let me explain. Let's imagine for the moment that Kat was right, and that there's somehow some magic path from the extremely basic artificial intelligence we have today, which is very simple pattern recognition systems, which can give the impression of, kind of deep thought and careful consideration, but they're just doing pattern recognition at huge scale. Let's imagine that there was some path from there to general superintelligence, which we have absolutely no reason to believe there is, but let's just pretend. Give Kat a fair go here. So how long is that path going to be? It could be 20 years, it could be 20,000 years, it could be 20 million years. Nobody knows. But somewhere along that path, AI is getting better and better and better. As AI is getting better and better and better, it's getting better and better and better at turning data into better and better models, which are better and better at supporting humans at doing things. And that means that as it becomes better and better, it is, by definition, increasing inequality. The people with more data and more compute are going to get more and more of these AI resources, which they can use to further their aims. And we know that the people who are in power are obviously going to be the people who want power. And so the fact that we have this increasing capability means that the real threat is the threat of a dystopia of huge social inequality exacerbated by increasing AI. And so what would happen along that path is that, yes, vast swaths of humanity end up effectively in servitude, but in servitude to corporate masters or to big tech billionaire masters, not to killer robots. This is indeed a very bad thing. It is indeed a dystopia, but it is not an existential threat. So the Oxford Dictionary defines exists as to have objective reality or being. So even as we all become minions in giant Amazon warehouses at country scale, being told by computers that are indeed run by AI that we have 3 more seconds to fulfill our next order, or otherwise we'll be terminated. And these are things which actually happen right now. We have not lost our existence. We've just lost our meaning of our life. And this is the reality of many people today. And if we're not very careful to avoid this widening gap, it's become the reality of more and more people. That would be a terrible outcome, but it would not be an outcome that is an existential threat. We would continue to exist. And if we are able to organize ourselves in such a way that as AI improves, we can avoid that dystopia, then I think we'll be able to avoid other threats from AI as well. These things are very avoidable. They require thoughtful policy and thoughtful regulation, and they require us being thoughtful as data scientists about what we do with this tool at our disposal. And that's why we're lucky to have AI ethicists like Kat and my partner, Dr. Rachel Thomas, working on these things. And so I would say, yes, let's not get distracted by the fake and totally unnecessary idea of an existential threat of killer robots, and focus on the very real threat we have, which is to the threat of our society degrading and people's lives becoming increasingly meaningless.
30 seconds left.
I'm done. I told you I wouldn't need the whole thing.
Right. All right. Thank you both. Now let's the rebuttals begin with Catriona.
Yes, right. Thank you.
Yes,
Yeah, good.
sure.
Awesome.
Go for it.
Jeremy, I'm really uncomfortable to say that I actually agree with everything you said. I
I
do
knew you
agree.
would.
Yeah, he has to know that. So I agree, ladies and gentlemen, that the more immediate risks that we face as a society, that bias, injustice, this dystopian future that Jeremy talked about, actually is real. It's real today. We know that the data is often biased against women, away from Indigenous communities, away from minorities. We already know that the risk is here for us to hard code the current biases into the. That's right. So Jeremy got that right. But that's all that he got right. Let's be honest. I think there is a potentially a lack of imagination shown in my worthy opponent around what the longer term future could be once this dystopian situation, which is as it is today, quite difficult. Less than 1 in 10 coders are women. We've seen the Facebook files challenges. All of this is with us today. And this is a risk. It's a dystopian risk, as Jeremy said, but it doesn't touch on the reality of what we are facing. And that is that these machines will become smarter and smarter and smarter. And in 80 years' time, absolutely have the potential to exterminate humanity. So I think Jeremy's argument was useful for the next 10 years and then really becomes not useful at all.
All right. Back to you, Jeremy.
I think we have to be careful about what threats we actually consider. We should keep our discussion of threats grounded in reality and not in imagination. There is a threat that the flying spaghetti monster could appear from around the sun and swallow up our planet. But it's not a practical threat. It's not a threat that's grounded in reality. So I think it's important to understand, what AI actually means. We use the term artificial intelligence as defined in Peter Norvig and Stuart Russell's book to mean computer systems which give the impression of having intelligence. They're not actually intelligent. Neural networks are literally just matrix multiplications followed by replacing negatives with zeros, and do that again and again and again. That's basically all they do. That is all they do. The idea that could turn into a super intelligence that decides to eat up humanity is at the same threat level as the flying spaghetti monster eating up our planet. It's not significant, and the more significant issue is to consider that when there have been big step changes in technology, such as the Industrial Revolution, what actually happened was, long term, we ended up better off. And short term, over the following decades immediately after the Industrial Revolution, the median person was actually a lot worse off. So we've seen these step changes in technology before. We know what happens. And so we should be focusing on that. How do we get to that better place and shorten or entirely avoid that few decade long downturn in society that we've seen before. That's a very real practical threat that's grounded in reality. And so I would ask, my opponent and the audience to consider grounding themselves in reality as well and come down from the clouds.
Okay, thanks, Jeremy. Back to you, Catriona.
Look, I think it'll be very difficult to come down from the clouds knowing, and I'm feeling it in the room, the real belief that there is a threat that potentially can be disastrous for not only you in the room, but think of your children and your grandchildren. What world will there be if this threat, remember, ladies and gentlemen, we're only talking about arguing that there is a threat of the existential risk. So I say in my closing remarks, with great respect to Jeremy, love you, Jezza, that Jeremy has only got just a small piece of the story. And I, ladies and gentlemen, in fact, do know that AI, that many of you are building in the room here today and are interested in, eventually has the potential to really be very damaging to humanity. And the question to you is, what if we ignored this threat? What would be the future if we ignored this threat? So again, I implore you, think of your children, your grandchildren, your grandchildren's children. They can't afford for you not to take this threat seriously. I rest my case.
Awesome. Okay, thanks, Catriona. Last rebuttal, Jeremy.
I think that is exactly the question we should be asking. What if we didn't think about this threat? And it's not just us. It's, you know, the people who are actually investing a lot of time and money into this. Folks like, you know, OpenAI. They have teams of people who are working on questions around AI existential threats. This is time and money and resources and brains that are being wasted on this big white man's problem. So the answer to the question, what if we don't think about this threat, is we instead have brains and money and resources being spent about real threats. And that's something that I think we can all agree we would much rather see. The problem is not that I am not enough of a mad professor just to imagine what could be in the distant future. That's me down to a T. But the fact is that the threat of AI getting increasingly powerful, for it to be an existential threat because it's become superhuman intelligent, that could only ever happen if, first of all, it passed through the point at which it was superhumanly good at supporting big companies and supporting billionaires and so forth. So there's just no way that existential threat is going to happen, without first going through these much more immediate, much more real threats.
Thank you both. I would say let's take it to reality for our current situation, right? Is AI as a threat for companies disrupting, or we would like to hear from our panelists, starting from you, Catriona, how AI is affecting companies right now, and is it a threat for the companies?
It's either a threat or an opportunity. And in fact, with this whole debate around existential, I'd love eventually to flip it from existential risk into existential opportunity. If we steer this technology in the right direction, there are vast opportunities for humanity equal to the risk. But at the moment, yes, AI provides an opportunity and a risk for organizations. The biggest risk I see is the dissolving of international boundaries and national boundaries, where the big tech giants in particular, AI-backed, can come in and just take markets away, particularly from Australian-based organisations where we are way behind the rest of the world in our AI capability. We have about 1/10 of the investment into AI that other countries like the US have. What are we doing to protect our country and our security and our companies from the large companies using AI where international boundaries will no longer matter?
Awesome. Thanks, Catriona. Jeremy?
So I would argue that AI is not an existential threat to your organization any more than it's an existential threat to humanity. If your organization fails, it's because you failed to harness AI. It wasn't AI that was the existential threat. It was your inability to take advantage of it. The internet and digital computing and digital cameras should not have been an existential threat to Kodak. They actually knew a lot more about creating photos than other companies. The fact that they didn't do it was the existential threat. And I will say, one of the things that people get wrong in Australia and around the world is the idea that it's an existential threat to Australian companies because you need huge amounts of resources and huge amounts of data and huge amounts of compute to compete. And that, we don't have Google-sized companies here, so we can't. So a lot of my research has been focused on studying whether that's true, and it turns out actually it's not. The vast majority of really effective practical uses of AI turn out to be things that you can generally run on a single GPU, often using just a few hundred data points. And so I think people in Australia should be really embracing AI and not feeling kind of intimidated or overwhelmed by this message from the big tech companies, the idea that you need to be huge, because actually you don't. You just need to be creative and thoughtful.
Awesome. Thank you both for this amazing, I guess, insight you provided about the existential threat about AI. I don't know if dodos had the same kind of meetings before they got extinct, but you know, it's not 0 and 1. We cannot just right now make into the decision of it either going to happen or not. This is an opening of the discussion, and it is up to you and our audience online to decide if they believe on either side of this argument. So now we're going to hear from you, and please scan this QR code or go to menti.com and vote for either side of this argument, and we will know the winners soon, probably in a couple of minutes or maybe after this session.
And can I just say, Steve, that I win it.
Definitely. We're going to get a lot of votes for you, hopefully. Thank you both. That's a wrap for this debate. And we are going to wrap up this one and go to the next event in a couple of minutes. Yep. We already got the result. I mean, we need to give it a little bit of time for it to, set with the right numbers, but I think are we still live? Let's wait a couple of more seconds. Getting there. All right. It seems that based on the votes, people disagree. Sorry for this, Catriona. And thank you, Jeremy. It seems that your argument was stronger, at least for our amazing audience here and online.
Very
Now,
thoughtful audience you have there.
Yeah, we need to check who voted. Maybe these are, yeah, we need to double check. Anyway, we would love to invite Adrian Pierce, Deputy Head of School from the University of Melbourne, who are the sponsors of this event, to give us a talk. Thank you.
Thank you for the introduction, and hello everybody. It's a bit of a hard act to follow for me, so acknowledge the traditional owners of the land and elders past, present and emerging that we hold this event on. I'm going to start with a proposition. So what does the speed of light, the fermion and machine learning have in common? So the fermion is one of those little elemental particles. Have a think about that. But I'm first going to have a go at putting artificial intelligence into perspective, focusing on three things to set the scene. I thank Boab AI and Artesian for the invitation along to this event, and I'm really excited to be here as part of that. Look, I think the three things I want to focus on here is that digital transformation is being led by AI, artificial intelligence. AI is multidisciplinary, as I alluded to in my challenge question I'll come back to. And AI leads industries of the future, and it's cross-sector. AI unlocks data from both physical and digital infrastructure like cloud, IoT, blockchain, and 5G. And it involves not only computer science, but also physics, law, economics, business, agriculture, the arts, and medicine. AI is multi-sector, so we have everything from new industries important to the Victorian economy, including reg tech, fintech, prop tech, sports tech, med tech, agri-tech, and retail. And it also transforms other industries. AI offers the possibility of leapfrogging digital capability with new intelligent offerings in the digital transformation journey. So we're excited about a curated commercialization pathway we're pursuing with Artesian, Boab AI, universities and industry, overcoming barriers to AI adoption, and venture creation by working shoulder to shoulder together. I think we're just at the beginning of this exciting road. There's huge worldwide potential. The global AI market predicted to snowball in the next few years. According to the Institute of Electrical and Electronic Engineers in their latest AI magazine, they forecast that between 2018 and 25, the Asia-Pacific region is forecasting to experience the highest compound annual growth. So that's really interesting. Of course, AI is riding on the back of the trillion-dollar digital transformation, widely forecast to reach that by 25, and it's growing at an annual rate of 16.5%. And so in other words, AI is growing faster here than worldwide in our Asia-Pacific region, with Melbourne one of the great university cities in the world, along with London and Boston. Many of our students will go on to develop AI solutions with industry globally. So one of those examples is Apromore, which automatically reverse engineers a corporation's IT system and consequently extracts more value from for their business in what's called business process modeling. Apromore recently received Series A from GB Tech, the European version of SAP, and Apromore have moved into the Melbourne Connect ecosystem. Okay, let me demonstrate now with my example how modern day AI really is multidisciplinary and multi-sector. So what does the speed of light, the Fermion, and machine learning have in common? So consider an AI application of deep learning and explainable AI for the diagnosis of medical images by medicos, something our group is working on at Melbourne Connect. So machine learning, including deep learning, is based on this concept of theory completion. So an incomplete example is explained by learning from past positive and negative explained examples. However, this relies on a symmetry between the past and the future. This is a very strong symmetry, often too strong, particularly when we only have limited or incomplete history of data, which is frequently the case for patients if they first present. The no free lunch theorem tells us how much we can learn from a given amount of data. At the end of the day, there should be no free lunch, regardless of how hard we try classically. However, it was recently proven in 2020 that the bound for quantum version of the no free lunch theorem is greater, i.e., you can learn greater from what's entangled in the data. But how do we unlock that? There's also recently shown in 2020 that AI can be used to capture indeterminism in physics. And this has amazingly been used as an important step for unifying the two theories of quantum mechanics and special relativity. Intuitionistic logic has been shown how the speed of light can be completely described by the mass of the fermion, this most elemental particle. Intuitionistic logic is studied in AI, a subfield of knowledge representation and reasoning. So using this logic, you can describe the motion of the fermion through a vacuum corresponding to a sequence of paradoxes with the fermion appearing and disappearing. In other words, the particle-antiparticle sequence. Importantly, the logic allows for a process-oriented or cyclic nature of time to be captured. Essentially, physics is explained using an AI theorem proving technique using logic. Incidentally, the science historian and anthropologist Stephen Jay Gould, you may have read, wrote a nice book on this paradox entitled Time's Arrow, Time Cycle. Back to the science, intuitionistic logic captures strong contextuality through model and category theory, which relies on geometry such as topologies. Quantum logic is one such intuitionistic language useful for quantum computing applications, and we have access to a quantum computer through our IBM Q Hub. So we wondered, how could advances in physics, such as special relativity, quantum mechanics, and quantum computing, how could that advance breakthroughs in AI? So in our research group, we're investigating how the notion of synthetic geometry can capture both theory completion and its dual paradoxical notion of theory incompletion, using a synthetic form of geometry more general than the physical universe. So you got it, allowing for strong contextuality with the ability to harness entanglement. So we can take incomplete theories and still process them even though they're incomplete. So in 3 dimensions, homotopy is this concept where a shape smoothly transformed from one to another, rather like a donut becoming a coffee cup, where the geometry still has one hole. We apply the same concept to logic in languages, and we can do things like contextual adaptation and introspective reasoning where we have incomplete knowledge about adversaries. So what can you do with it? Learn more with less data. The phenomenon of learning without data has in fact already been demonstrated less formally through the evolution of Google's or DeepMind's AlphaGo to AlphaZero, now MuZero, where AI can learn to play Go, never having seen any data from human gameplay. Reinforcement learning together with symbolic search is used to learn gameplay through self-play using simulators. And obviously, DeepMind's interestingly turned their attention to AlphaFold 2, creating a step change over state-of-the-art techniques in bioinformatics. And our research groups beat DeepMind in 2015 in Austin at 43 out of 50 games on the Atari Challenge for superhuman AI gameplay using retro game simulators without the use of any training data, just the simulator. In 2019, master's student Yuan Tang, studying with Scott Aronson, incidentally, Scott's the zookeeper for the Computational Complexity Zoo, which articulates the quantum complexity classes, discovered a classical algorithm for AI recommendation systems by simply inspecting a quantum algorithm. Such algorithms are driving retail sector digital transformation. And we showed at the International Conference on AI here in 2017 how we can learn maneuvers for UAVs using the same technique for applications such as precision agriculture, funded by DST Group using simulators. So this is where cross-sector learnings come into play. So I might leave it there. Thank you for coming along to the presentation, and the University of Melbourne is proud to sponsor it. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you very much. Awesome. Thank you, Adrian. And also thank you again for sponsoring this event. We will now have a short break, and please come back at 2:25 for our next event, which is a panel discussions about how to go global with AI. So for those online, jump back to the next session via the link on Eventbrite or LinkedIn Live. Thank you.